Hello, friends. A sad incident happened in Poland. There was xenophobic street thuggery in Wroclaw, and we will have two topics. The second topic is the loud statements about Stalin's gifts and the redrawing of European borders. We'll discuss why everyday chauvinism always turns into criminal behavior. And of course, we'll also examine the falseness of political fairy tales about various historical lands. Friends, please give a like and subscribe to the channel right now. Thank you so much for your likes and for supporting aerodynamics. Well, let's get down to business. So, let's probably start with this everyday chauvinism and its surprising manifestations. In Wroclaw, 3 local citizens, after hearing something in a store, what do you think it was? A Ukrainian accent, Ukrainian speech. They decided it was a great reason to show off their patriotism and lofty spiritual values. As a result, there was a brutal beating. The guy and the girl may both have concussions, and the girl also has stitches on her neck. Everything was caught on video. Friends, if YouTube doesn't allow this video, please go to the comments. There's a link to Telegram there. Well, let's break down this whole episode, because, you look at all this, at this video, and you think, my God, people, what's happening to you? 3 adults decided to carry out a xenophobic attack on 2 people, one of whom is a woman, right? This isn't just crazy, it's some kind of, some degenerates in their heads. Their heads are full of a mess of chauvinism and hooliganism. Basically, it's pathology, as they say in Polish. And why does this happen, right? Because economic and social processes always create friction. When someone injects, and we know who, tension into society, it's the most uneducated groups that boil over first. They don't need to understand the reasons, they just need a simple, obvious enemy. Heard an accent? Oh, there he is, that's the one responsible for all my life's troubles. Let's go beat him up, and of course they do it as a crowd, that's it. But the fact that he's with a girl, oh well, it's no big deal, we just don't have the brains or the courage for anything more. So yeah, friends, by the way, I was in England too. We're getting to the most cynical, and if you can call it that, the funniest moment in this whole story. So people were offended by someone else's accent. Seriously? Seriously. I want to ask, my dear friends, when was the last time you were in England? Because, I don't know, damn, there are a million. Millions of Poles have passed through London, Manchester, and all sorts of British pubs over the last 20 years. And I don't know, I've heard people speaking Polish in Cambridge. Or rather, Poles speak English, yes. So basically, only a deaf person wouldn't recognize the Polish accent in the UK. They too were newcomers, working construction and washing dishes, and they spoke with a wild Eastern European accent that made the local Scots and English wince. And now these very same people from their comfort, act like masters and tell others how to speak using their fists. What kind of brains, what kind of mess in your head do you need to have to spend years complaining about discrimination against your fellow citizens abroad, and then do exactly the same thing right under your own nose at the nearest corner store? You have the memory of a goldfish. Honestly, as they say, you can't have it both ways. Either you're against xenophobia everywhere, or don't be surprised when, somewhere in, say, Birmingham, some locals come up to you and rough you up for speaking English the wrong way. What conclusions can we draw from this whole situation? Of course, it's a mess. Any kind of everyday nationalism always ends up turning into this kind of pathetic criminal thug behavior. There's no ideology here, just 3 idiots and violence. Second, there's video evidence, which is good. Yes, I hope that the Polish police officers will do their job to the fullest extent. Let's see how the local justice system works, because if these 3 aren't punished, they'll just go out and beat someone else. They don't care who. Just because they didn't like someone's hat? Although wearing a hat in July may not be the best example. Anyway, guys, seriously, street crime grows instantly if you don't crack down on it hard. We wish the victims a speedy recovery and good lawyers. And as for the attackers, we wish them to get acquainted with the workings of a Polish prison, so do they stab you in the eye with a fork there or not? Basically, and preferably for a long time, because, well, that's just brutal. There will definitely be some degenerates in the comments now who will say, oh, it's not that simple, we don't know the whole truth, the Ukrainians provoked it themselves. All of this is just a setup to whitewash these 3 Polish patriots. We'll definitely see it in the comments. So what else caught my attention, friends? The second topic. Citizen Putin claims that Ukraine will sooner or later lose its western lands, which belonged to Poland, Romania, and Hungary before World War II. Like, again, about Stalin's gift. Stalin gave those lands as part of a unified state. And he says sooner or later Ukraine will lose those western lands. and that Poland used to own them, Hungary used to own them, Romania, sooner or later, maybe in a year, 2, 10, 15, but historically things will return to their rightful place. That's what that scarecrow, who is the president of the Russian Federation, said. According to him, the only way to keep those lands would be with the help of whom? Russia. Only. The only guarantor of Ukraine's territorial integrity is Ukraine, not Russia. But they considered it necessary and possible to declare Russia their enemy, and to declare Russians in Ukraine. Na Ukraine, by the way, just so you understand, sorry to interrupt the quote. So, Na Ukraine is like the bicycle on which bearded guys took your mom behind the garages to screw her. Just so you know, it's in Ukraine. So he's referring to the non-titular nation. So, that Russians in Ukraine are non-titular, a non-titular nation. Let's break down this nonsense with facts and basic logic. The fairy tale about Stalin's gift. Talking about how Stalin supposedly gave something to someone is just childish nonsense coming from someone who calls himself a politician. The borders after World War II were redrawn not on a whim, but as a result of a massive war and tough negotiations at Yalta and Potsdam with the United States and Great Britain. Moreover, for centuries, hundreds of thousands and most likely even millions of local Ukrainians lived in these lands, Galicia, Volhynia and Zakarpattia. The reunification of these territories with the USSR was a solution to the ethnographic issue and an acknowledgement of post-war realities by the international community, not because Stalin was bored and decided to just give away land. This wasn't about a nobleman's personal generosity. Historically, things returning to their historical places leads to a war of everyone against everyone, as that's what's being claimed. And the idea that Poland, Hungary, or Romania will definitely take back their lands is simply opening Pandora's box. Their own, according to which year? 1939, 1914, or the 14th century. If you play this game, then Poland should actually give half of its current territory to Germany. And Poland itself, by the way, once owned Smolensk. Attempts to redraw borders based on some kind of historical rights instead of international treaties are a direct call for endless wars and chaos in Europe. Or maybe you don't want to give a bunch of land to China or Mongolia, dear Mr. Putin. Alright, moving on. Who is a guarantor for whom? The statement that the Russian Federation used to be the only guarantor actually contradicts legal documents, but Putin doesn't really understand the law. Ukraine's borders were established by international UN acts, the Yalta-Potsdam system, and the main treaty of friendship and cooperation was the one between the Russian Federation and Ukraine in 1997. In it, both countries officially recognized each other's borders. Referring to the grievances of the elite instead of signed treaties is simply twisting logic. And then there's the manipulation of the term titular nation, the statement that Russians were declared not to be the titular nation. That's just confusion of terms for the sake of a catchy phrase. In Ukrainian laws, in the Ukrainian law on indigenous peoples, it refers to peoples who do not have their own state outside of Ukraine. For example, the Crimean Tatars, right? Russians have their own great vast Russian Federation. Poles have Poland, Hungarians have Hungary, and the concept of a non-titular nation doesn't exist in legal documents at all. It's a journalistic cliche that's simply used to manipulate. It's manipulation. But Putin, as I said, is a lawyer, but not a very smart one, not smart at all, to put it mildly. So who cares? If he has ears, I'll keep talking. In short, all these stories about gifts and historical lands are only needed for one thing, to justify the current political situation after the fact. History isn't a gift shop, and international borders aren't modeling clay. Learn the basics and don't fall for cheap propaganda. That's exactly what those people do, the ones who fill your ears with all sorts of nonsense. That's all. Leave likes and write comments. See you next time. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.